What we have here is the most powerful Mustang ever. This week on Ignition, we're going to find out if it's also the fastest. Under the hood of the Shelby GT500 is a supercharged 5.8-liter V8 that makes, you may want to hold your jaw in place for this, 662 horsepower and 631 pound-feet of torque. Not only is that more than the Camaro ZL1, not only is that more than the Corvette ZR1, that output makes this the most powerful mass-produced V8 in the world. And there's something more impressive than that, if you can believe it. This 662 horsepower Shelby doesn't get a gas guzzler tax. Now, Ford's made some rather lofty claims about this car. I think it's time we put them to the test. Our first stop would be K&N Engineering, where we dyno the monster Shelby. There was one more thing we wanted to find out. I already did the calculations, and it looks like this car would hit 200 miles an hour at the top of fifth gear at about 6,400 RPM. We wanted to find out if that was the case before we attempted it. So after a handful of dyno pulls, we've got peak numbers of 583 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque at the rear wheels. Now, if you apply about a correction factor or a drivetrain loss factor of about 12%, that means that this engine is making horsepower right as advertised, but torque might actually be underrated by as much as 30 pound-feet. Even more impressive, this thing is generating over 500 pound-feet of torque at the wheels from 2,000 RPM to 6,000 RPM. In terms of power delivery, there is nothing that can match a supercharged big V8. Now that we knew how much power we were working with, we'd head to the test track to perform our standard set of tests. First thing about launching the Shelby GT500 is that the rear tires are very sensitive to temperature, so we're going to get some heat in them really quick. Second thing to note is that you hit 60 in first gear, so that means bringing the thing all the way out to 7,000 RPM on the red line and then just hit your shift as fast as you can. Thirdly, we have launch control, which is a very nice thing to have in a car with 662 horsepower. You have to go into the menu, into the track app settings, select launch control, and through the display you can choose your RPM between 2,500 to 5,200. I've been launching about 3,800, seems to match this surface right, and that's what we'll do. Traction control gets you out of the hole without an issue. 60 comes in 3.5 seconds. Quarter mile, 11.6 seconds at 125.7 miles an hour. It's about half a second faster than the ZL1, and it feels every bit like it. Now for our 60 to 0 braking test. Our best stop from 60 took 101 feet, but following stops took longer and produced a lot of brake odor. Let's begin the figure 8 test in the Shelby GT500, shall we? And oh my God, this thing accelerates so hard out of corners. it's taking some effort just because of how fast it is. I didn't think it would be that great mid-corner, but I'm really surprised at how capable this thing is around our figure 8 track. It doesn't want to power slide, which is great if you want to set down fast lap times. It doesn't want to understeer, it just wants to grip and go. If you get a little carried away, it will do that. But that's all on the throttle, that's not on the chassis. Man, this thing's fun. I was honestly surprised. Ford claims that this car saw 200 miles an hour at the Nardo testing facility in Italy. We're not in Italy, of course, but we're going to test that claim. So we're off to Arizona, towards one of Chrysler's proving grounds. There, we'll find a 5-mile oval and the chance to see 200 miles an hour. So we've logged a couple hundred miles in the Shelby GT500 now, and what's really impressive is that this doesn't feel like some ragged edge supercar. You don't get a sense that this thing is a 600 horsepower, 200 mile an hour capable Mustang. In fact, on the freeway, it just feels kind of like a normal Mustang. You have this super long 6-gear overdrive, which means at 75 miles an hour, the tach's barely spinning 1500 RPM. And you don't really get that edge of horsepower until you roll into the throttle. But even then, in 6th gear, that just means you can pass anybody whenever you want without downshifting. It's impressive that a car with this kind of power, with this kind of capabilities, feels totally normal on the street. It's almost like Grand Touring levels of comfort and performance, even though the performance is so great. The thing is, we got to get to Arizona quick. You don't just try and go 200 miles an hour, especially in a Mustang. Every component of the car must be analyzed and prepared. The undercarriage must be inspected. The tires have to be up for the task, heat cycled and free of scratches or excessive wear. And then you have to consider the environment. The Proving Grounds location in Arizona is about 2,000 feet above sea level, and it's hot out. That means the Shelby's supercharged V8 won't be able to breathe as much air, but also that the air is less dense and won't be resisting the car as much.
Well, we're at the Chrysler Proving Grounds in Kingman, Arizona with a Shelby GT500. I'm skeptical. I come here to this test skeptical, but I'm excited because the whole prospect of getting up on the high banks on a 5-mile oval and just going flat out until the speedometer quits climbing, that is exciting.
So we have the results from one of Randy's first few attempts here. This red line represents speed. This is his attempt. Let's see how fast he went. That's 190.73 miles an hour. Not bad for over 100 degrees out. We're going to try again a little bit later. The heat forces us to stop for the day. We'd try again early the next morning. arriving on track before sunrise when the cooler exterior temperatures would allow the engine to make more power.
'92, '93, '94, '95. '96.06.
I think that's about all. That's all we're going to get.
You think?
Yep.
Okay.
At this point, I think it's a matter of just either a longer straightaway or lower elevation. We got so close, so close. The goal was a 190 miles an hour on the banking as we entered the straightaway. And then throughout the whole straight, which is over a mile, we got 6 miles an hour. We got to 196, and proud of it. This car is a 200 mile an hour car. It's fair to say that. We are at altitude, we're in the heat, it's less than ideal. If the straightaway was another probably mile or two longer, we'd get there.
While we didn't hit 200 miles an hour, it's hard to call this car a failure. Quite the opposite. This Shelby GT500 represents one of the most incredible performance per dollar ratios we've ever seen. And on top of that, despite being the fastest Mustang ever, it's usable and drivable in ways you could never imagine. We were 4 miles an hour away from the 200 club in a car with a base price under $60,000. That's something you can only get in America.
What's wrong? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Stay strong. Hold on. Just one more.